Okay, just approve that and we'll
Right.
start in a few seconds. Okay, all right. All right. Hey, Joe, how are you?
Pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Great. Well, thanks for jumping to my show. It's wonderful to host you. Um, just for the sake of the audience, before we even start to go and talk partnership, because this is what our show is all about, is just to kind of break down the different elements of partnerships and give a key insights to our audience of what to avoid and what needs to be done in order to be very successful in that space, which is very complex in these days. It doesn't get any easier for vendors to kind of tap into their partners and ecosystems, and it's always kind of going above the noise, because there's a lot of noise in the market, and we always have to reinvent ourselves and make sure that we are doing things a little bit different because we need to be at the minds of our partners. But before we go through that, maybe you should introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your journey within partnership. Where have you started? Why have you started? What are you doing today? And what's your plans for the future?
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much. And thanks for having me. Been following your content for
Pleasure.
a while. I'm super stoked to be here. So appreciate it. So yeah, my background, again, my name is Joe Henderson for those listening. So I joke around and say I kind of Forrest Gumped my way into partnerships, meaning I had no intention of going into to SaaS, no intention of going into partnerships, but I kind of fell backwards into it. So I grew up around the Philadelphia area, went to Temple University. Upon graduating, I moved to Portland, Oregon. My brother had moved there, seemed like a nice place. So I moved out there, stayed on his couch, and got my first job selling helicopter parts to the government.
Very
So
cool.
obviously, so obviously, very different than SaaS, and ended up getting a job at a sales job at a SaaS company in Portland. In Portland, it is a very awesome, tech town, very close knit. So a lot of people that work at one company will work with people at others. So um, I got a job at an email archiving company, worked there for about a year and a half, and then I got recruited from a very up and coming startup called Puppet or Puppet Labs at the time. And so they were, 50 people at the time. I had no idea what DevOps, what really, what they were doing over there, but it seemed like a cool place. So I jumped into that. And then upon doing that, I was selling training, these 3-day training on-site courses that they were selling, as well as kind of doing a little bit of sales, dabbling into that. And then I noticed that we started getting a bunch of leads from international markets. And so I was asking my boss, who's responding to these? And there were some being responded to in Europe, but they were, very small company. There were some auto respondents. So I kind of put my hand up and said, hey, do you mind if I respond to some of these Asia Pacific leads, like from Australia, New Zealand? They seem to be coming in quite a bit. Let's see what's going on there. So anyway, jumped into that, had a lot of great conversations. We started putting on trainings, advertising trainings there, and a lot of people started buying them. And then randomly, I got an inbound email from a partner who was managing a large bank, and basically said, "Yeah, they can't be using this open source software. They need to buy an enterprise version of this." So, long story long, I guess we sold a very large deal very quickly through a partner into Australia, into a
That
large
is
bank.
so cool.
Yeah, it was very lucky. I think back at how that random sort of email kind of changed my life a little bit. So my boss basically said, "All right, looks like we need to get on a plane and figure out what's going on there." So hopped on a plane with him. We went to Sydney and we went to one of those trainings that we had put on. We met with that bank, obviously. We met with that partner and a couple other meetings, and things kind of snowballed from there. And then he said, "Well, looks like we're going to need to open up an office there. Do you want to move to Australia?" And so my wife and I, we were about to get married. We were engaged at the time. We actually fast tracked our wedding for visa purposes, and hopped on a plane and moved there for 2 years. So being so far away from the U.S. And having to sell through partnerships internationally, I kind of got thrown right into being the sort of partner lead for the region. And I spent 2 years flying around from Australia to Singapore to Malaysia to Hong Kong, Japan, and back. basically getting what I kind of call an MBA in partnerships, because
Yeah,
I had to learn really quickly, and each country was different in how they actually partnered. And so it was yeah, best experience ever. And then ended up, moving back to the States after 2 years, and worked for a few more startups, just building partner programs. So yeah, I kind of, like I said, I fell backwards into it. Was very lucky that I did, but yeah, I got a really great experience over those 2 years that I've applied to, the gigs that I've had here in the U.S.
fantastic. Oh, that's great. Well, I remember my kind of moving to the US,
Yeah,
building a partnership from scratch for the central region for a great company by the name of NetApp back in the
yeah,
days. But we were selling, an interesting solution for a new market that they wanted to tap, and we're working 100% through partners.
yeah,
And that brings me to kind of maybe the first questions, which is very intriguing. It's moving and taking SaaS companies into international markets.
yep,
Selling locally is one thing. You have enough challenges and hurdles in-house to do that, but understanding how to take this whole motion, your whole GTM strategy into other markets, what that requires from the executive team, from the partnership team, talking about alignment, talking about what requires to succeed. What's your take on that?
yeah. So there's a lot to unpack there, but my take is there's you can get really distracted by a lot of things, because there's a lot of countries out there. There's a lot of potential, and hopefully, if you're in a SaaS company that's lucky enough to start to get some, some inbounds, or start to get some partners that are asking from different countries, you really have to align with, the executive team, and make sure that there's buy-in. One, that to do partnerships in the first place, that's definitely the number one, kind of reasons I think partnerships fails, because if the exec team isn't fully aligned. So assuming they are, and then really having a conversation with them, letting them know that there's going to be some exploration taking place, that you're going to be looking at the different countries out there, and each country is going to be slightly different.
Right.
Um, and then figuring out what of those countries that you're going to start having conversations with, whether it's a prospect for a direct lead, or just partners that you're getting through inbound, or that you're recruiting, is that you have to really think deeply about the folks that live there. Like, who do they trust? Is it distributors?
Right.
Is it
Yeah.
resellers? Is it consultants? Like, who are the folks that they really trust there? And then approach that there's going to be nuance. So there's going to be tax nuance. There's going to be relationship nuance. There's going to be cultural nuances. And so just approaching it that is not the same as it is in the US. The reseller in Minnesota is going to be different than a reseller, in Tokyo, right? It's
Right.
totally different, and you have to approach it that way. And so, kind of going back to that, you need some time. So you need to kind of get the buy-in. Like, we're going to do a lot of research. We're going to do it really quickly. We're going to come back and iterate on this, but it's going to take some time. It's going to take some research. And then when we do find some of these partnerships that we think will work, we're going to lean into just a couple. As I mentioned before, there's sort of this shiny object syndrome, where there's so many conversations, and talking to most partners, the first conversation usually goes well, even if it doesn't result in anything. So you can get really distracted, chasing all these different types of partners or customers in all these different countries.
How important is to have people on the ground in those geographies or countries, or how do you overcome the lack of, those kinds of resources at the very beginning? Because as you mentioned, there's a research period. There's a time where you kind of assess, what works, what doesn't, where's the best kind of go-to partner you should team up with. So how to deal with this kind of process, right? That can alleviate that pain.
Yeah, I think one of the first big things you can do before even visiting or having boots on the ground is just make the commitment, whether it's you or somebody else that's willing to. If you have somebody that's willing to work in that time zone, not those like full 8 hours, but to sort of speak in that time zone, meaning if you have a inbound from New Zealand, like respond to them and say with their time zone, and put in parentheses your time, and like actually offer them times that are
Yeah,
actually
makes
nice
sense.
in their time zones. So let them know that you care about, like, their time, that they're going to be dedicated to talking to you, and be willing to take that call at 11 p.m. or 5 a.m. here or there, and just show them that you are up, you are working at this time, and you can support them. I find just even a lot of smaller startups I've seen where they kind of almost, they don't demand it, but they will say, well, we can only meet between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. your time. That's the only time you have for them. So it's not a great place to start if you're telling a partner that you can only talk to them during their dinner time, right?
Right.
So you have to make that sort of dedicate that time out, even if it's 3 or 4 hours of that day that you're going to prospect into or have those conversations. And then from there, you got to go there. Like, if you do get some traction, you do get some joint customers you want to talk to, and you get a partner that really feels like they're going to lean in, you have to have that, I guess, that budget and that time to actually go and spend time there.
Yep.
And not just go to meetings, but like hang out with them, like spend time with them. If you go over a weekend, like figure out what they do for fun, like join them on a hike, or just really kind of let them know that you're going to commit to this. Share meals, hang out with them, get to know their culture if you haven't sort of been there before, and then from there you can really take it into a good place.
Do you feel that there's a difference in the program structure, commercially wise, or any other aspects from region to region? Is it something that you need to be minded about?
Yep, totally. So I always, if I can go back to Asia Pacific, when I was going there was partners in Sydney that seemed like they were just partners in Chicago. They were exactly the same. There were these boutique DevOps consultants or a reseller, operated the exact same. They just had a different accent. It was the exact same. Whereas if you're going to, Singapore, Japan, Hong Kong, it's way different. I remember going to Japan where, you kind of need to go through distribution there. It's kind of the rules of the road there.
Right.
There's some really amazing distributors, and they have their book of resellers that they'll bring in. But you kind of have to go through that path. So understanding how people actually buy, the process and the time it takes to actually go there, because sometimes it takes a couple trips just to get their trust, even signing that distributor agreement. And then from there, you kind of have to lean on them to really set up these meetings and introduce you in, and you're kind of talking maybe 10% of the time in these meetings, and really hopefully you've enabled that distributor to kind of speak well on your behalf, but lean into that. So yeah, you have to really just do that in that research, figure out the time that it takes to set up these partnerships and what types there are.
Yeah, I agree. I think different regions, it's not just about the culture or the language. Again, we deal with people, right? People first.
Totally.
And it's all about the relationship and building those kind of relationship. And of course, if you have those relationship in place, it's great. But some cultures are more open for new type of relationship, right?
Yep.
They're more kind of acceptable, accepting this kind of way of doing business, right? Sometimes they just trust the locals, so you need to work via a distribution layer, which if that's the way, that's the way, but you need to kind of build this second layer of partners, right, that can support you in every type of deal. That brings me to the question that I ask other people that join my my podcast, which is, I wonder, when you start building your partner program, right? This first kind of month 1, month 2, month 3, how do you scale that? Where do you start? What's kind of the most challenging aspects that you today understand that needs to be tackled sooner than later, right? To create that motion that allows you to, and always I say, if you fail fast, because you have to learn quick, right? Totally. And adjust and build whatever it needs to be built in order to scale that later on. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is like simplification. So, you could build this robust partner program that's got all these like crazy deal registration, a portal, or all these enablement things, but like, how can you actually make it simple? So when you're having these initial conversations, which you should have a lot of to see who you would like to lean in or who wants to lean into you, is actually making this simple. And it's not, let's have an hour-long call and let's talk for 50 minutes and do our entire sales deck like we would do for a customer, right? That's not going to make them think that like you want to understand their business. So obviously, like, you can give them that deck and you can like give them all the details, but really just talking about how you can jointly help one of their customers, or and vice versa, right? So how do you simplify your messaging? So I always think of it as like, the easiest way to do this in learning, it seems like, break it down into 3 points. So like, here's what our product or our service does and how it's complementary to you at 3 points. And then maybe create an analogy so they can remember it. And then have like a visual aid. So don't spend 2 weeks with your marketing team trying to create the perfect,
Right.
one pager. Just like get the greatest hits, right? Just get the greatest hits so they understand what it is. And then also make them learn how they get paid. So learn how these partners actually make money from the company that you're talking to. Is it a service partner that's going to refer your product in? Like, so like, what type of services are they selling? Like, how are they selling them? And then speak to actually how they can make money with your product or service. And if they're a reseller, or they're a distributor or a boutique consultancy, like really simplify it and speak to how they can make money with you. And then from there, just race to get that quick win, even if it's not just like a close one deal, but just getting that first call with a joint customer that you bring to them or they bring to you. Hopefully it's reciprocal. And as far as the account that you're talking about, get that win, at least the light bulb goes off where their customer, let's say they bring you into a customer that they bring in, and their customer kind of lights up because of this product, that how it's going to help them. And then take that win and sort of, if it's a closed deal, obviously you can get to that point, shout that win wire as loud as you can internally. But even if it's a great call, shout that internally about how you could potentially help one of their customers. So I guess the long story long is simplify your messaging, simplify how your product works, give it to them in bite-sized pieces or analogies or visual aids, and then just try to get on the phone with some joint customers. And then from there, you can figure out how you're actually going to scale it.
Yeah, I agree. Those are super valid points, and it's the simplicity of the things, because I think the partners are going through a massive pressure from many vendors, because as we know, you're not kind of the only child, right, that they should care about. And normally those partners, and some of them sells hundreds of different solutions, right?
Yep.
Which they carry under their belt. And you need to understand, exactly how they sell, who they sell to, and what motivates them, and what actually requires to succeed with them, again, from deal to deal.
Yeah, I agree.
And that reminds me that you took a part of a service provider, right?
Yeah.
You were in partner throughout your career. So that's an interesting kind of angle, because today you're with a vendor, but back in the days you were a partner.
Yes.
So what it brings, I think it brings a very unique perspective on things. So what can you share with us on that sense?
Absolutely. So one of the companies I was working for, I was building a partner program, and the company, I probably had about 5 partners that we were leaning into. One of them was a premier AWS consultancy, and the ISV that I was working for got acquired. And so a lot of us were sort of going to go along with that acquisition, or potentially take another path. So I really liked this partner. I'd known him for years, and I always had joked around with them about, hey, when it's time, this partner was located, their headquarters is in Latin America, and then another office in Europe. So they had a lot of US customers, but didn't have a physical office there. So I would always joke around saying, hey, when the time is right, I'll open up the US office. And so that sort of, with this acquisition, that timing kind of happened. And so I I opened up the US office for this premier AWS consultancy and was on the other side for once. So being a partner manager, I think at that point for 7 years or something like that, now I was the partner. Now I was the consultancy selling cloud services, partnering with one of the big hyperscalers and probably two or three ISVs.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite a different shift, but a very amazing experience because I kind of got to really feel it from the other side.
It's interesting. So what's the takeaways from that?
Yeah. So one of the things, and this kind of goes back to our international conversations, and you probably have a lot of international listeners here, is that
Sure.
what I realized is because the headquarters of this company was in Latin America, even though I'm obviously my name's Joe Henderson, it's the most US sounding name, and I was
Yeah.
based in Oregon, right? But my company in some of the systems came up as the country of Latin America. So when I was getting started, I wanted to have some conversations with folks. I think some people that work for these larger companies just would kind of like look at the company name, look in their their portal or their system and say, oh, this isn't the US, like I'm not going to bother with it. And then what they didn't know is we had some really amazing US customers. When I would get through to them and have the conversation and I would talk to them about the customers that we had, they would say, oh, sorry, yeah, I didn't know that you had these customers. And I said, well, you could have learned that if you would have picked up the phone or
Right.
responded to my email. So one of like the big learnings is everyone's really busy, and especially these hyperscalers, every partner, every ISV even is trying to get a piece of their time. So like the messaging, like hopefully if you do have a decent amount of like really good customers or interesting stories at least, is just tweaking your talk track to like go at them, like whether it's a LinkedIn message or your initial email into who you want to partner with, is just basically just validating yourself with these customer stories right away. And that got a lot of traction. So I spent a lot of time at first just kind of getting rejected or not really getting people responding to me.
Hmm.
But every time I would, whether it was at a conference or I would finally get in front of them, they would say, oh, sorry, yeah, we should be working with you. So that was definitely a big lesson. Little uneasy at first, but then yeah, just learning how to tweak that messaging and how you're going to go to market with them.
So what makes those ISVs more successful than others? Working with partners. What's kind of the holy
Um,
grail?
yeah, so I think it's like this. The holy grail, I always call it like the bank of reciprocity. So it's like if you have
Yeah.
a positive or negative balance in that bank of reciprocity, can really steer, where you're going to go. So what worked best is, as a partner, as a consultancy, you have like a book of business and you could potentially refer in or start conversations with these ISV solutions. And that's usually where it starts. And so the ISVs that would actually just either equal the leads we were bringing to them or
Mhm.
just proactively make introductions, even if it didn't go anywhere, but just like the effort that was made to try to make
Interesting.
introductions really went a long way and just made us pay attention and made us really think about how we could sell their or refer in their product more. So it was really just this goes both ways. Like you can't approach any partnership hat in hand just saying where your deals or who's your customers. Got to figure out a way, even if you don't have like a customer on hand that you can think of introducing, like how can you go prospect on behalf of this partner
Right.
to potentially get these customers. There's some efforts that can be made to really make it happen.
Fantastic. That's a great insight. That gives us a great bridge into another piece of the puzzle that you have been dealing with
Yeah.
for some quite of time, which are the hyperscalers, the
Uh-huh.
Googles of the world, the Azure,
Yep.
and you were part of a great company by the name of Tackle.
Yep.
Um, so let's talk about that new go-to-market trend. It seems that everybody is kind of leaning towards those hyperscalers,
Yep.
cloud providers, marketplaces. How partnership structured within that kind of process, mechanism, platform, and what needs to be done in order to make this type of partnership successful from your perspective?
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, I was very lucky to work for Tackle for about a year. So on that team, it was an amazing team, and so there was basically all the clouds, or the three major hyperscalers were where we covered as far as helping folks get listed, and then helping them co-sell and providing them with tools and services to sell more in the marketplace. So, if you think about the timeline, when Tackle started, it was just two guys that had figured out how to get people
Right.
listed in the marketplace, because it was really hard. It was really, really hard. It would take people, 3 months, 6 months just to figure out how to get listed. And so obviously their service took off, and then they made a kick-ass product that went with it. And the company just is having amazing growth. And so what Tackle does really well, and how they coach folks, and just in general what ISVs need to kind of figure out as they're building their partner programs, is marketplace is a huge part of their sort of partnership strategy that they should couple with everything else, but it should be a huge part of it. A huge percentage of their revenue should be going through marketplaces, or potential going through marketplaces. And so what they really need to figure out is, there's three of them out there. You're available to list in certain ones, and you aren't in some of, you aren't in some cases, depending on where your infrastructure is built. And so you need to really figure out what your product, like how it is sold today, how it's built, and is this going to benefit a customer to buy through the marketplace? And then really understand the benefits of going through the marketplace from a customer perspective, because they can burn down their commits.
Right.
And that, amongst many other things, it's easier to procure. And then the biggest one that is probably not shouted enough is that these hyperscalers have gamed their commission structures for their reps to get paid on these deals. So if you think about it, all these hyperscalers, let's take it from a huge view. All these hyperscalers, they want to make their cloud more sticky, and so they can fend off the competitors, right? So they're gaming their commission plans to have their sellers do more marketplace deals. So people are buying more stuff on their marketplace. So yes, it benefits the customer, but it also benefits the seller. And so if you understand that messaging on how your product can obviously help that customer, but then understanding the comp plans and the ways that those sellers are motivated, you can then reach out to them and say, hey, I'm working with this customer. Can you introduce me to the rep that's covering Bank of America, as an example, or whatever, right? And then understanding that message of how you can help the customer, you understand their comp plans, and then how easy this can be. You'll get a lot more traction that way. So yeah, it was incredible. So Tackle has 400-ish customers, or probably even more than that now. But it was interesting to see how people were completely transforming how they're selling today. So obviously people still have their their reseller, their consultancy, their distribution channels that they're going through.
Yeah.
They're really leaning into these marketplaces. And one of the big lessons was, this kind of goes for any type of partnership, but the folks that were really successful and really invested in it. And the folks that were dabbling in it and just kind of had that idea that, oh, if we list this, they'll just come and people will either
So,
discover it, or the reps will
so
bring us people.
that means you have to put resources into that kind of partner program
Yep.
piece of the
Yeah,
puzzle.
absolutely.
You
So
have to
usually,
work with the BDMs, you have to work with the account executives
yep.
day in, day
So
out.
yeah, absolutely. So I think it starts with that education, really, of like what marketplaces are, like all the things that I mentioned before, is like how people get paid, why it's important, how it can benefit everybody. But yeah, then usually there's like a cloud alliance person that will kind of run that.
Okay, got it.
It's either
Yeah.
hired to run that. And they're kind of just like almost an internal marketer into the team, educating them on how to do this. And they're the connector that's connecting with the cloud sellers and making sure these deals happen. But sometimes for small startups, which I saw a lot, there was tiny startups that were 20, 30 people, and they understood the value of this. And they said, we're not going to hire a direct sales team. We're not going to go all in a marketplace. Obviously we'll sell directly if they want to, but we're going to make this our first offering as far as how to purchase. And so we saw a lot of success happen there with people going to marketplaces
Yep.
early. But yeah, you do need to kind of build the operations of that.
Yep.
And one of the biggest things is that education piece. So not only for the sales team, but also for like the finance team, because a marketplace transaction via the AWS or Google or Microsoft Marketplace looks a lot different on the books than a annual SaaS subscription. So you have to make sure that they understand how this is going to get processed, how they're going to reconcile it, and what fees do these hyperscalers take. So there's that operational education that needs to happen as well, so people aren't kind of taken aback when that first transaction comes in.
Question that relates into those hyperscalers, because we came from a world of different partners, resellers, and now many of those resellers have to invent themselves into those type of hyperscalers marketplaces, right?
Yep.
And there's a room for that, but is there a need to come in and educate those partners, assist them to do kind of a co-selling mechanism that assists them to understand how to sell through those marketplaces? What's the role of the partner in our future world of the marketplaces?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I have some strong opinions that were kind of, I guess, bold a year ago, maybe, but like they're already happening right now, which is cool. And this is where I see things going. Is that, if you take just the AWS marketplace, they have some great programs they've built. One's CPPO or SPPO.
CCPO, yep.
Some more letters for people to memorize. So
right.
It stands for, consulting partner or channel.
Something like that, right?
Private offers, right? And so it allows these resellers or consultancies to sell marketplace deals via there. So there's a lot of partners that have jumped on this, and they understand that they don't want to get, not killed, but their business somewhat killed by the marketplaces. So they're jumping in because they're already having these conversations with the customer, and then they are they're reselling these marketplace deals to their customers. So they're getting a clip of the ticket as far as like the transaction, but that's not really the most important part of it. It's just staying in that deal and being that provider of all the solutions for the customer. So where I see this going, where I even see some distributors are building this now, and a lot of just even service providers, because there's going to be a world where all three marketplaces, you're going to be able to sell services,
right.
your cloud services, and then you're going to be able to bundle in these products, these marketplace products in it. So I see a world where sort of the reseller or MSPs are kings, where they're doing the cloud migration, and then they're doing the modernization services, and then they're also like sort of managing that cloud. So if you think of it from a transaction standpoint, they could actually go to their customer and sell them their services, let's say 6 to 12 months of services, and they say, we're going to monitor, we want to monitor it with this product. So Datadog, we want to, do site reliability with PagerDuty or whatever that is. And then they want to, have a FinOps tool like ProsperOps or Cloudability or something like that in there to manage their cloud costs. So they could actually create a bundle. Right now, it's a little separated, the transactions, but there's going to be a world very quickly where they can issue a marketplace private offer that has their services and it has their prescribed 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 marketplace products in it as well. So for the customer, it's great because they have one sort of lead partner that has prescribed them this outcome, and they can just click and buy services and products all through that one link.
Interesting.
And it all goes to it all goes in the cloud bill for that value there. So they budgeted for it. So the budgets now are condensed under that cloud bill. The procurement can manage the subscriptions through there, and it's all in this one transaction that can be centrally managed. So that's where I see things going, and it's already kind of happening. People are already
doing it. It's happening big time. I think most of the small startups rushing into those marketplaces. They're already identifying that they exactly need those alliances manager. That's all he does every day is talking to those marketplaces, working with the BDNs, working with the accounts, working with the partners, understanding how to bundle everything, the co-selling, co-marketing motion, right? And there's a lot of tech stack that actually being built just to support this whole movement, right? And you have to make sure that you embrace that tech, because automation, it's all about automation and how quickly can you get into that marketplace at the end of the day, right? And make yourself available and actually combine those joint deliverables, right?
Yep.
To your customers. So
Yeah.
that's super important.
Yeah,
Um,
you have to be there saying, hey, we're here in the marketplace and we kind of get it. We get how people are paid, we get how this works, and we get that we need to potentially be combined in a bundle, and we're happy to do it. So just taking that sort of like the older approach, this is how we did it 20 years ago,
mhm.
to hey, we're here, we're ready to play in the clouds, and however that shakes out.
I agree. I agree. Very, very well. Um, the partnership world and us as head of partnerships, it's super challenging.
Mhm.
You pretty much there's always like seven, eight balls in the air, right?
Yep.
That needs to be managed. There's always things that needs to be done. You have to think ahead many times, working with full alignment with your marketing, sales team, operation, executive, and not always it's roses, right?
Yeah.
And flowers and sometimes it just stuff out there. So I always ask people how what's the top challenges and how you overcome them, or if you were the younger self, what would you say to yourself when you jump into such a role?
Yeah. It's a great deep question. First, like I guess the number one challenge, there's all these challenges about finding the partner types, building the program. But now that I've done this for a little over a decade in many different SaaS companies and working for a partner, the number one thing that stands out by far is getting that exec alignment on partnerships. So this could happen in your interview process if you're about to join a company. Sometimes you don't always have that opportunity, but it happens early in the process to make sure everyone is aligned.
What it
Because
means? What does it mean, alignment?
so basically being aligned on that a partner strategy is going to be a significant part of the strategy. So it's not a department. Partnerships is not a department. It's not a person. It's not an idea. It's not somebody that's going over here and playing with something and trying to figure something out. It is a overall company strategy, like period. And so making sure that everyone is aligned on that, because I mean, like you and I, all our friends are, these head of partnerships now, and
Mhm.
you either hear that's going really well, it's going really bad. And usually it's like, you're trying to get some momentum. And if somebody isn't fully bought in, whether that's an executive or even like a director of sales who maybe has their dusty old playbook of how they do direct sales, and this is messing with their deals, you hear that, or it's
A lot,
slowing deals
a
down or
lot.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that can really stifle it. And so, yeah, one of the things is, figuring out who, if even if you have a little bit of, if you're lucky enough to get most alignment, but even if there's a little bit of pushback, making sure you're identifying the people that are really leaning in and getting those wins with those people, and just making it so overwhelmingly positive that the people that are pushing back just don't have a choice. But anyway, number one reason, or number one thing that happens, challenges, is getting that exec alignment on partnerships as an overall company strategy as opposed to a department.
It seems that you have to have a strong political acumen, right? Just to
Yep.
be able to kind of work as a metrics within your
Yes.
organization, making sure you address the right messaging to the right department, right?
Yes. I think that's a great point, where it's like, what do they like? So you take sales, the sales department, like partnerships should get you deals faster. They should get
Correct.
people to potentially bigger deals. And, the leads that you get from partners should convert to an opportunity quicker. So it's like those should happen, and that's common that they do. So figuring out those metrics that you can start to capture right away and showing them as soon as they come in saying, hey, we just got a lead from this partner. It's already an opportunity. This just closed. This sales cycle was 33 days as opposed to your standard 90 days. Making sure that's, it's like then you become this internal marketer that's just
Right.
shouting that to everybody. So, and then you're right. Yeah. Whether it's, finance or whether it's marketing, making sure you understand their metrics and how partners are actually helping across the board for there is super important. But yeah, I kind of went off. So your other questions is, what do I think sort of partnerships is, and how I think about partnerships. One of the main things that is, if I could like summarize, It's long-term relationships over short-term transactions.
Hmm.
So when you're entering a partnership, it is thinking like, can this person be sort of not my friend, but can this person or company be someone that I work with for the next 10 years, right? So am I willing to invest in a longer term partnership with them, spend more time with them, really getting to know them and learn it, as opposed to saying, where's my deal? I need to get this deal in as soon as possible. So I guess partnerships in general is taking this long-term approach to just relationships and figuring out how you can both make money together. I always say, like, sort of like a, not sort of catchphrase, but the way I think about it is, make friends, make money with your friends. So the quicker that you can become
Great.
friends with these folks and make money together, it's going to be
Yep.
great. It's much more fun that way, as opposed to trying to do it on your own. And then you don't end up burning any bridges. So yeah, partnership's all about the long-term transaction, or excuse me, the long-term relationship over short-term transaction.
Short transaction. Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, fantastic. Hey, Joe, it was great conversation. I think you've touched some of the most crucial insights that every channel chief slash head of partnership needs to kind of relate to, right? Making sure that they're building their go-to-market strategy, alignment, which is super important here. Being minded about the partners and looking into the future with these great marketplaces, which are about to change or are changing the
Yep.
way we partner and with whom we can partner. Because now the options get even greater, right? And you have to tap into those.
Absolutely. And like, I think we're really lucky in that our sort of partner community that we're in right now is so open and it's so like, there's so much content out there now. It's awesome. So it came from a place where it was, maybe we weren't looked at as like the most, not respected, but like, it was like, what are these partner folks doing? To now it's like, it's mainstream. Everyone's doing it. And like, whether it's, subscribing to Partner Hacker or joining the partner leaders community, like I'm part of all that stuff. Like there's just so much great content and everyone is willing to help. So if you're
I
like an
agree.
early like founder who interested in partners, or an early partner person or a salesperson that wants to or probably should jump to partnerships earlier, like there's so many resources, and every partner or person just like yourself like is always willing to talk, always willing to help, and I make myself available to as many people as possible. So
Fantastic.
we're in a really lucky spot right now. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This was an awesome combo.
Let's have a partner kind of mindshare approach, right? Because that's
Yes,
kind of the whole thing, making
absolutely.
sure that you're approachable, and it's
Yep,
more about giving than getting in many of the cases, because that creates this kind of wheel,
yep,
flywheel,
yep.
as we all call it, right? That propel itself.
Absolutely. It's taking a hospitality mindset to this whole thing.
Yeah.
So
Thank you so much, John.
yeah, thank you.
It was great. We'll see you soon,
Awesome.
probably. Hopefully in the next round of partnership leaders catalyst event
Absolutely. I'll see you there.
later on.
Thanks for
See you
having me.
there. Take care.
Cheers.
Enjoy
Bye.
it. Bye bye.